Hi, it's Panda Movies here. Today, I'm going to explain the movie called Cargo. Warning, there are spoilers ahead. Enjoy the video. The movie opens with a world that has already been overtaken by a virus that turns people rabid within 48 hours. The story revolves around Andy Rose, his wife Kay, and their baby Rosie, traveling down a river on a houseboat in rural Australia. It is implied that the family has been traveling for quite some time, since their rations from the government start to run out. Kay proposes that they could go ashore and scavenge for food in the nearest town, but Andy immediately rejects her suggestion, arguing that it would be much safer for them to remain on the river until they can seek refuge in their next destination. The next day, the little family comes across an abandoned sailboat. Andy decides to search for food and supplies, but immediately leaves when it becomes apparent something else is aboard. Despite being there for only a moment, Andy manages to gather some supplies and shows Kay his haul. However, he forgets to tell her about the danger. Kay defiantly goes to the abandoned sailboat to collect some more supplies, but is bitten by a rabid human. Andy finds Kay trying to bandage her bite wound, and he insists on taking her to a hospital, since she was more susceptible to bleeding out before the virus could even turn her into a zombie. The family disembarks and finds an abandoned car, setting out to find the nearest hospital in the largest town, indicated in their map. While on the road, Andy forcefully swerves to avoid an Aboriginal man standing on the way. They crash into a nearby tree. Kay is further impaled and Andy loses consciousness. When he finally wakes up, Andy discovers that Kay has already turned into a zombie. Her transition was sped up by her injuries. Before he could even react, his wife bites him. Fortunately, Kay is stuck on the passenger side, preventing her from attacking them further. Andy removes Rosie from the car and prepares to defend her against an undead man, only to discover that he is tied to a little girl. The girl reveals to him that the man is her father, Willie. The little girl, Thumi, has been hiding Willie from her mother, Josie, and the rest of her community because the Aboriginals have been killing and burning the infected, and she believes her father can be cured by having a shaman restore his soul. After their brief encounter, Andy and Thumi part ways, and he finally reaches the town, which was so much smaller than he expected. The town is deserted apart from Etta, a schoolteacher who takes care of him and Rosie for the night. Etta tells him that all of her students and their families are mostly Aboriginals that decided to discard modern trappings to go back to the old ways. A seizure wakes Andy the next morning, a sign that the virus was quickly spreading in his system. Before Andy and Rosie leave, Etta shows them a picture of Thumi and her parents, telling him to find so that he may leave Rosie in their care. While searching for Thumi and her parents, Andy chances upon Vic, who is pinned under some gas cylinders. As a thank you, Vic brings Andy and Rosie to his shelter and introduces them to Lorraine, who Andy assumes is Vic's wife. Andy's suspicion of Vic grows larger by the second until he finally learns that Vic uses healthy humans in cages as bait to lure out the infected so he can shoot them, with Thumi being one of the victims. Later that night, with the belief that Vic and Lorraine were going to care for Rosie, Andy attempts suicide. However, Lorraine stops him and tells him the truth that she is not Vic's wife, but is captive after he murdered her real husband. Vic discovers them and knocks Andy out, and he awakens in the same cage as Thumi. The two team up to escape from the cage, coming up with a plan of using the combined force of the infected to pull open their cage. As soon as they break free, they return to the shelter to rescue Lorraine and Rosie. Unfortunately, Vic manages to shoot at them as they escape, killing Lorraine. The following morning, Andy confronts Thumi and tells her that her father may never get better. Upset, Thumi marches to where she hid her father, only to discover that her people had already discovered Willie and put him down. Initially distraught and blaming Andy for delaying her, Thumi relents but rejoins him when she hears Rosie crying. The little group continue with their journey and decide to travel by motorboat that leads them to a campsite where Andy previously saw another family, but learns that the father has been bitten and plans to kill his family and himself with a revolver. The father tells Andy to use the gun's last 2 bullets on himself and Rosie. When the family is dead, Andy takes up the gun and debates whether to go through with suicide, but is stopped by Thumi. They then notice smoke nearby and move to investigate. As the trio pass through a railway tunnel, they re-encounter Vic. Thumi hides with Rosie inside a parked vehicle on the tracks, while Andy attempts to fight Vic. During the struggle, Vic manages to grab the revolver and wounds Andy with a shot, then goes after Thumi and Rosie. When Andy recovers, he finds Vic cradling Rosie and weeping over the loss of Lorraine. Vic peacefully returns Rosie to Andy and allows them and Thumi to leave. As they continue with their journey, Andy enters the final throes of infection. With his time almost gone, he asks Thumi to look after Rosie. With one last attempt of keeping the children safe, he asks for Thumi's help to bind his hands so that they may not be able to reach them when he turns. He also has a piece of meat on a stick attached to him, so he will remain distracted as he carries the girls on his back. They eventually catch up to a party of Aboriginal warriors that includes Thumi's mother, who recognizes Thumi's whistle. Overjoyed, Josie embraces Thumi before taking Rosie off Andy. One of the warriors is about to kill Andy, but Thumi stops him. She sprays some of Kay's perfume, which allows Andy to regain his humanity, just long enough to know that Rosie is now safe. Once done, Thumi nods to the warrior to put Andy out of his misery. The warriors and Josie look sadly at Andy, realizing that he is Rosie's father and that he saved both Rosie and Thumi. The party then returns to a camp deep in the wilderness, where many other survivors are shown living peacefully and safe in a community. Thumi and Josie inspect Rosie for injury and find Andy had painted the words "thank you" on her stomach. Thumi looks up at the sky sadly, while Josie exchanges a sad look with the other women gathered around, understanding the great sacrifice Andy made for both girls. Josie then also looks up at the sky in silence thanks to Andy. Behind the special effects, the elaborate reason as to how the world came to be the one shown in the movie, the story highlights a father's unconditional love for his daughter. It showed how Andy would go lengths to protect his daughter, and that his determination in keeping her safe was stronger than the virus that was trying to take over his system. As the saying goes, a father's love is having a permanent armor for the rest of your life. Which Rosie will continue to have for the rest of her life.